We're still discussing cricket. Love the cricket on this Wednesday edition of the SportsMax Zone. There has been a lot of discussion surrounding a two-tier test system which essentially advocates for the top-ranked teams, including England, India, Australia and New Zealand, to exclusively compete against each other, while those in the lower half of the rankings would make up the second tier. Former West Indies fast bowler Kenneth Benjamin, who played 26 tests, has endorsed the proposal as he believes this might work well in the development of West Indies cricket. Here's what he said. I think it is better for a lot of teams if they have a two-tier system, and honestly, I know West Indies may feel it a bit, but they're pushed down in that. But if they're pushed down in that, I believe there is something that is overdue. That's how we're going to know if they're getting better. It also gives the team in the bottom tier something to really work at. It's not just that they're playing at that level. It's that they can get the opportunity to go up and play against the best teams and the best players in the world. Yeah, Kenny Benjamin scheduled to be on this segment to talk more about the comments that he had made in an Antigua Observer story. We haven't gotten through to him yet, Kenny Benjamin, but as we had mentioned to Reds, it is something that is in the air, and while Reds is correct in that it isn't something that has been installed, it is something that is being speculated on, but most people in the West Indies would be against this. So I was very keen to hear, even though we see what he has said, to flesh out his deeper thoughts on this issue, because on the face of it, if you have the West Indies being restricted to just playing bottom half of the table teams, how would that benefit West Indies cricket? You know, a lot of the funding in West Indies cricket in home series would come from the attendance when teams like England and India come to the Caribbean. And if that's not going to happen, I just see a really gloomy picture being painted for West Indies cricket.
Yeah, and that word attendance, I feel, is what kind of like strike this discussion back up again, because of the Border Gavaskar trophy competition that took place recently, Lance, just last year, December. Of course, the attendance, the numbers were off the charts, you know, the viewership on television, records, when you look at the numbers. So I think, again, when those things happen and you realize, as you know, two powerhouses in cricket, you can make a lot of money out of this. You know, you're getting the necessary practice and everything that you need, Lance. Then, you know, you feel as if you want to just limit it, right? So I've been like listening to different discussions about this topic, but it comes back to one key point for me. Okay, the top teams, they continue to play against each other, they get bigger, they get better, but then who helps the greater good of cricket? How do we help the teams if we want to think about world cricket? How does this benefit them? There are no benefits to them, because I'm thinking about the lower teams playing against each other. That's no major competition. You're not coming up against the best. You have nothing really to measure yourself by, and then they'll never grow.
Yeah, the other thing that I've been considering in this, and we have to talk from a speculative standpoint because nothing has yet been decided. So while we would hope that if something is placed on the table as far as, you know, how the thing would be structured, and there is confirmation that there would be a relegation promotion system, because that is part of the concern for Caribbean fans and anyone who is against a two-tier system, trying to understand how it would be done. I've heard comments to suggest that while the competition battle would really be separated, that there could be something in place for a top-tier team to play a second-tier team on, you know, on ad hoc tours. So to give, you know, the lower-tier team some opportunity and not have a situation where they are completely not up against the top team. So at the risk of, or in the situation where we are unable to know exactly what the plan would be, it's hard to make definitive statements on it. But I would suggest that if it is that a two-tier system is going to be put in place, some of these things have to be known, because it would safeguard at least the opportunity for the second-tier teams to have a handle on on, competition against the big teams and ensuring that they can. Because, I know the West Indies are struggling in international cricket and
it's
Test cricket.
difficult for top teams to go up against a team that can't bat for at least, that only plays for 2 days, Lance. You have to think about that too.
Yeah, I understand that, but the point I was about to make is that while the West Indies has struggled, it's not that the West Indies haven't beaten some of these top teams. Only a year ago, they beat Australia in Australia to tie the series 1-1, and Australia is widely regarded, along with India, as the best Test teams in the world. The rankings there showing Australia at #1.
Yeah.
West Indies in the last 5 years have beaten England in Test series. So it's not that the West Indies is a 100% losing unit against these teams. They have been able from time to time to come up with big performances against them. And I think that should count for something, because when you look at the proposal of having a second tier and West Indies competing in the second tier, when would they get the opportunity to show that they have in their tools some equipment that they can use to beat top teams?
Well, they wouldn't.
But that's what sport is about.
Yeah.
I understand that sometimes if you have a proliferation or too much of a big number of competing teams, and then a vast difference between the best teams and the worst teams, then you think of a two-tier system. But when you have 10 to 12 teams playing Test cricket, why would you want to separate? The number is already small. So if you're going to put a situation in place where only the top 5 or 6 play each other, I know the financial benefits for those top teams, and I'm not suggesting that is not in any way, shape or form important. But sport is about competition, and you'll always have teams better than other teams in sport. That happens in every aspect of sport. So I don't think, and as Reds mentioned and as Clive Lloyd mentioned, we'll hear some comments from Clive Lloyd in just a moment. I know we have to go back in history to talk about the West Indies' dominance, but the legacy of West Indies cricket and the imprint that West Indies cricket has had on world cricket, it seems unfair to me that because the West Indies game has declined, they would be shoved over into a nondescript segment of international cricket when they had given so much.
Yeah, and one of the things Ravi Shastri said in an interview is that if you want Test cricket to survive, you need to allow the big teams to play against each other, so there'll be a contest. And I wanted to know what.
But that's already happening, as far as I'm concerned, because when they play, they have 5 Test series, and that's one of the methods they have used to ensure that they can maximize the benefits of their top tier performances. So that in itself isn't embraced by everyone, but I understand that is one of the ways that they would use to ensure that they can pump and generate more investment in the game internationally. Yeah. Because I think we all agree that Test cricket is struggling in a lot of the other countries.
No,
it isn't struggling in England, isn't struggling in India and Australia, but it globally as a format, Test cricket is struggling. I just wonder if this is the only or the best way to solve the problem. Clive Lloyd had made some strong comments about the two-tier system last week, because he was talking in the face of the ICC getting ready to discuss it. And here's what he said. It would be terrible for all those countries who worked so hard to get to Test match status, and now they'll be playing among themselves in a lower section. How are they going to make it to the top? When you play against better teams, you improve. That's how you know how good you are or how bad you are. I'm very disturbed.
Yeah, anybody who has, massive love for cricket and Test cricket will be disturbed. I mean, those sentiments, Clive Lloyd is somebody who has been in, cricket for as long as, older than I am, Lance. And, his impact has left that sort of legacy. So he says disturbed, but for me, it's more hurt and heartbroken that we're even having this discussion. The only thing, Lance, I'm holding on to is the fact of what happened in 2016. I'm hoping that, the big threes, one of them at least step up and, think about the smaller teams that And I'm not even thinking West Indies. I'm thinking about the other teams that would have gained the test status and they're improving and they're working on their game, and just to sideline them like that and not give them the opportunity to play against the big teams. You know, those are the teams I'm actually speaking about. Kenny Benjamin, an update on that?
Yeah, we are unable to get through to Kenny Benjamin, so our proposed segment to have Kenny Benjamin discuss this topic with us will not happen today because we are unable to get through to him. I just think it's sad that we're having this kind of discussion less than a year after the West Indies, with an understrength team, went to Australia, won a test match, and were able to tie the series against the world best Australians. And we are talking here about West Indies going into a second tier. I understand the comments about the West Indies game being below par for decades, and some people think that their lack of performances reduced them to this disappointing position. But I just think in sport you'll always have teams better than other teams. And I don't think, given the landscape of Test cricket and what West Indies has offered to international cricket, Test cricket in particular, that the West Indies should be suffering this indignity. Anyway, we'll be back with more on the SportsMax Zone. I think Ramarak is up with the second zone updates after this.